Daniel Sports Centric, we go over a college football game preview and prediction on the Week 3 matchup between LSU and Mississippi State. Two teams in very different positions looking forward to Week 3. LSU is a team that is 1-1 on the season, but this is a team that heading into the season, very high expectations. Everyone's expecting this team to be a college football playoff national contender, and this team off to a 1-1 start. Suddenly every game is like a playoff game for the Tigers. But Mississippi State on the other side, this team very much has an underdog mindset. I mean, this is a team that's had lower expectations heading into the season considering all that's happened. And so for Mississippi State, this team is a team that's really got nothing to lose right now, taking on an LSU team that has everything to lose. So massive match for both teams coming up here in Week 3. We'll be going over a full game preview and prediction on this matchup here today. Let's get started with your team trends. LSU beat Grambling State 72-10 last week. Took care of them no problem after obviously a disappointing loss to Florida State there in Week 1. Lost to them 45-24. So, I mean, you consider that. I do think LSU is still in contention for the playoff, but obviously, I mean, every game matters at this point for the Tigers. You take another loss in the regular season, those hopes are just about gone. So, I mean, LSU being ranked still in the top 15, I think is very deserving. This is a very talented team that still can do a lot of damage, I think, in the SEC this season. But Mississippi State on the other side, this team beat Arizona 31-24 last week in overtime. So an impressive win over an Arizona team that I think is very improved. I don't think they'll be a big contender in the Pac-12 this season, but they should at least be halfway decent. So Mississippi State 2-0 to start out the season, and obviously a dominant win over Southeastern Louisiana in Week 1, 48-7. Games be on Saturday in Starkville. Kickoff is noon Eastern. Spread going with LSU here by 9.5. So the Tigers are favored by about 10, which, I mean, it should be kind of a close spread with Mississippi State being at home. And Bulldogs have been pretty good so far this season. Obviously not a very dominant win last week over an Arizona team that LSU would probably dominate for sure. But in the end, I do think this is a matchup that could be a sneaky one for LSU for sure, going on the road. And obviously, I mean, the Tigers have got a brutal schedule too, and you just have to expect that being in the SEC. But down the road, I mean, a big matchup against Ole Miss in a couple of weeks, and obviously the game against Alabama in early November. That's probably going to end up determining who wins the SEC West again. So definitely a tough schedule for LSU, but this is not one to overlook here for the Tigers taking on the Bulldogs. Series history, LSU leads at 77-36. They've been overall pretty dominant in the history of the series, but Mississippi State has won 3 of the past 10. So they have found a way in the past 10 matchups or so, but LSU has won the last 2. Stat comparison for this one, LSU 70th in points per game. This is a team that defensively so far this season, obviously allowing 45 points to Florida State. That will skew the stats quite a bit so far for LSU. This is a team that is definitely not 123rd ranked defense. This is a much better defense than what these stats show. It's just that tough matchup in Week 1 against Florida State, a team that is very much a national contender. I mean, for all we know, Florida State could win it all this season, so you do have to consider that. But this is a team that is very strong in the passing game. Jaden Daniels, obviously an excellent quarterback who really broke through last season, Arizona State transfer, and was great last year, and so far has been great this season as well. But even for Mississippi State, Will Rogers, and obviously this is an offense that is very strong in the passing. Will Rogers is an excellent pro-style quarterback, but off to a bit of a slow start with the passing game so far, being 106th in the country in passers game. But give it a few weeks, I think Mississippi State will be way higher in that category. And even the rush defense, not too bad for the Bulldogs so far this season. Your key punch for this one, LSU 1-1. They rebounded last week after a brutal loss to Florida State. But once again, this is a team that is not out of contention quite yet. I mean, even last season, it's just being in a strong conference, that's what's critical. And LSU, obviously in the SEC, the strongest conference in college football, you can still get into the college football playoff for sure, 14 playoff with a loss. But at this point, I mean, if you take another loss in the regular season, that really affects your chances. I mean, it's still possible for an SEC team. It just becomes very unlikely. That means you have to win out and win in the SEC championship game. And so for LSU at this point, one-loss team, I mean, the pressure's on for LSU. I mean, you can't be losing another matchup because that just ruins your chances. So that's why the pressure's on. But for Mississippi State, Will Rogers being back, the Bulldogs have some good experience. This is a team that I don't see being a big contender this season. I just don't think they're talented enough to do that. But this is a team that is talented enough to be a dark horse in the conference and pull off a big upset or two. And what a big opportunity for the Bulldogs to do that here against LSU. So, yeah, they're coming off of a close, impressive win over Arizona, though. I mean, I understand that some might look at that Arizona-Mississippi State score and think, oh, the Bulldogs not very good. Once again, though, Arizona was a team that last season, they did improve, and they were definitely better than where they were in the past, and they could honestly be better this season. So, overall, a good win against them last week, and overall, this is definitely a matchup to keep an eye on for Week 3. And with that, let's get to the prediction here for LSU and Mississippi State coming up here in Week 3, a big SEC matchup. And in the end, I'm going with LSU to win this one 31-20. I think that Mississippi State is a team that can definitely keep this close, and I think they do for a long time. This is going to be one of those matchups that I think goes back and forth for the majority of the game, and I think LSU finds a way in the fourth quarter to score a big touchdown or two, maybe force a turnover, and that's kind of what flips it. And in the end, I'm going to be taking LSU 31-20. But this ain't going to be a big blowout. I can't imagine it being that way. I think this is going to be a close matchup for a good chunk of it for sure. And in the end, Mississippi State's going to have a chance, but the Tigers just too good of a football team, and I think that they bounce back from obviously their disappointing Week 1 loss, and they get a nice win on the road in Week 3. I'm going to say 60% towards the Tigers. Over-under is 53. I'm taking the under for this one, so I do expect more of a moderate to a lower scoring matchup, but the over-under is definitely tough to bet on for this one, and I do have LSU barely covering the spread in the end. But definitely one of those sneaky matchups that could be a really good one in Week 3. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below on this matchup, and I appreciate you guys for watching as always. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. Catch you on the next one.